Stephen Harper opts out of attending the UN Climate Change Summit. And now you can bring that unique diplomatic experience to your own dining room setting with the Absent PM place setting from the Binsdale Mint. It's just like having the leader of Canada not show up at one of your important functions. A regal place setting complete with office-quality nameplate, an attractive leatherette maple leaf placemat, and nickel-plated cutlery that lend a regal yet vacant reminder that your leader does not show up anywhere there might be difficult questions. Collect the dozens of settings available, commemorating all of the global events he skipped. Anywhere where he may be asked a question that deviates from his talking points, Stephen Harper will not be there. And now, you can recreate that wonderful feeling in your own dining room with the Binsdale Mint Absent PM Place Setting Collection for that special ignored feeling.
Hi there, I'm Darren Howard.
And I'm Robert Nisbet.
You're tuned into Video Radio, which is independent media
For an intelligent world.
And we're taking a look at Stephen Harper not holding up his end of the environmental bargain.
Yes, there's very few things he actually shows up for unless it's going to do with war or money.
Yes, I know. Or, of course, photo ops with Asians. Gotta love that one. Yes, and Christy Clark, she's also in the hot seat, too.
And of course, the Mount Polley disaster, the largest environmental spill since the Exxon Valdez, has dropped out of the news. But here's an update for you.
More than a month after the Mount Polley tailings pond breach, people affected by the mine disaster say very little has been done to clean up the mess.
Quesnel Lake has now, in the last week, changed color. It's green. It's never been that color.
Residents who live in the community of Likely say the water remains cloudy and full of sediment. First Nations say there's limited testing of water being pumped from Polley Lake down Hazeltine Creek into Quesnel Lake. They're also concerned about salmon and say trees coated with sludge are being removed, chipped, and sold for profit. First Nations say the lack of a timely response to this disaster may force them to act on their own.
It will mean that industry will not be welcome in our territories with respect to large resource development projects, and for good reason. Governments have completely sold out the environmental values of this province to industry.
In a statement, Environment Minister Mary Polak said all test results and restoration plans are posted on the Mount Polley website, adding the full cleanup will likely be measured in years, not months. She said the government's immediate concern is to make sure the company begins restoration at the site as soon as possible.
Yes, indeed. The amount of reporting coming back from that tailings pond breach is criminal in its expansive understatement.
Exactly,
What I'm talking about?
I mean, but Imperial Metals, of course, is not going to have to pay for their screw-up.
Imagine that, an energy company not paying for the mess that it's leaving us in. Maybe we should just seize the company, sell off its assets, you know, stuff like that.
Of course, the Pentagon has come out recently and said that climate change is a force multiplier and a national security concern.
Yes.
And the Greenland Ice Sheet is turning black.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder why nobody's talking about it.
We're talking about it. Check this out.
As far as the eye can see, this is what vast sections of Greenland's ice sheet looked like this summer. Not the snowy white north we imagine. And the glaciologist who recorded the images is sounding alarms.
What happens in the Arctic doesn't stay in the Arctic. And that's because melting of Greenland will affect sea level rise around the planet.
For 2 decades, Jason Baux and his team have studied Greenland's ice. He's known for a while. Global warming is speeding up glacier melt. But this phenomenon, snow and ice darkened by soot, is happening faster than he ever imagined.
Soot, also known as black carbon, is released when you burn dung, coal, diesel fuel, and wood.
The soot, being black, absorbs more sunlight. Increased melting is the watery result. What almost certainly made things worse, smoke from this year's unprecedented Arctic fires, drifting to Greenland via jet stream. And catastrophic wildfire is the new normal, says this wildfire expert.
Fire has been increasing in Canada. It used to average about 1 million hectares, and now it's 2 million hectares. This doubling, we believe, is due to climate change, and we actually believe it's due to human-caused climate change.
Scientists believe algae may also be a factor. Whatever the cause, it's clear the soot is contributing to an epic melt.
This science message should be clear enough now to policymakers, decision makers, to forge policy that minimizes the risks from climate change.
These images aren't something politicians can ignore. Jason Box's research has yet to be peer-reviewed, but he released these images now, hoping world leaders at the climate summit will see them and act.
The science behind climate change. Now, we're not talking about global warming. Remember, climate change is being caused by us heating things up, and that makes the weather go wonky.
There is a 96% consensus amongst climate scientists that we are the cause of global warming or climate change.
It kind of reminds me of an old joke, but I won't be talking about that right now. The Conservatives, we started off by mocking Stephen Harper because he is so mock-worthy.
And of course, they did set some standards they were supposed to meet regarding carbon emissions. However, a recent report has come out showing that they are woefully off target.
And of course, we're going to run two clips back to back. And apparently, we have some extraordinarily bad news about wildlife.
We made a commitment to reduce our emissions by 17% from our 2005 levels. We are not there. It doesn't look like we are going to get there if we continue on the approach of regulating each sector of the society. The federal government's, the regulations they've already put in place, let's say the objective is 100%.
Yep.
What the federal government has already put in place gets us about 7% of the way there, which means we have 93% left.
Well, I think people realize we have taken decisive action. If you look at what's happening in Canada right now, our economy continues to grow and our emissions are still well below 2005 levels. So we are taking action. There are positive effects with the actions we've taken.
Are you saying she's wrong when she says you're unlikely to meet the commitments? Is she wrong?
She has her opinion, and we certainly have our opinion, and we're going to continue working the way that we're working because we are seeing reductions in greenhouse gases, Evan, for the first time in Canadian history.
In the last 2 years, current federal measures in place have, I'm quoting you, little effect on emissions by 2020. So you're saying without regulations on the oil and gas sector, essentially, all the other regulations are making zero difference. Your government has promised for 8 years regulations on the oil and gas sector. That's the fastest growing emitter. When will those come?
Like I said, we are continuing to work on them, Evan, but we're not going to be putting in regulations that are not aligned with the United States, our greatest trading partner. The energy sector, as well as the transportation sector, are very much aligned. There are other sectors that aren't so much aligned that we can work on. But this one is so important, we have to make sure that we get it right. The plan is working. If you look at the facts, as I said, the economy is growing, and we are seeing greenhouse gas emissions decreasing.
At this point in time, we still have 6 years, but the evidence shows that we're not going to meet that commitment. It is a big, serious issue.
So capitalism sucks.
And of course, until we tear down this capitalist system, we will continue to mess up our environment and keep destroying ourselves.
And remember, they're just going after GDP. When they talk about the economy, substitute the word economy for bank profits, and you'll understand why we're sewering the planet to make some bankers happy.
But the most progressive state in the Union, California, has come up with an idea that maybe will help the environment. They're banning plastic grocery bags.
Something we should probably see locally. Check it out.
By a new report from the World Wildlife Fund, or WWF, according to the organization, over the last 40 years, the number of wild animals on Earth has been reduced by a shocking 50%. The authors of the report pored over data from 1970 to 2010, looking at 10,000 different animal populations and representing 3,000 different species to come to this disturbing conclusion. This absolute obliteration of wildlife extends from the land to the sea, with every animal from the African elephant to the blue whale dying off far faster than they can procreate. In fact, according to a 2010 UN study, as many as 200 species of animals and plants go extinct every day. The devastation is directly connected to humanity's viral consumption habits and rapid industrial expansion into every corner of the globe. Now, while there's no doubt that the effects of climate change are also having a palpable impact on animal populations, overexploitation of animals is the biggest contributor to their decline. And a close second is habitat degradation, which covers human activity like the deforestation of the Amazon. Consider that according to the report, in freshwater ecosystems alone, wildlife populations have declined by 75% since 1970, which is no surprise considering that rivers are the first casualty of toxic agricultural runoff and artificial dams. Now, fortunately, many developed countries at least have strong conservation and animal protection programs in place, which is why the report found that most of the wildlife reduction is taking place in developing nations in Africa and Southeast Asia. But the researchers also noted that first world nations are basically outsourcing biodiversity loss by purchasing products that are created through animal and habitat exploitation. The good news is that we now have the scientific data to see the true havoc humanity is wreaking on these helpless populations. Now, whether or not we use this knowledge to take real action is another question entirely.
So good news.
That is good news. And we always do like to report good news so we get a little bit of balance to go along with all the depressing news that we are forced to report.
Unfortunately, we do have to talk about the crap and nonsense being pawned off as an economy as we start looking at a plenitude economy. And that's what I'm suggesting you look up on YouTube. There actually is a solution to all of our capitalistic woes.
Check out Russell Brand's. His comments lately have been bang on. I mean, for a comedian, he really does know what's going on.
And of course, The Guardian is hating every second of that, but we're going to cover more on propaganda and, of course, Russell Brand coming up in a new show. I am Darren Howard.
And I am Robert Nisbet.
You're tuned into Video Radio.
Independent media
for an intelligent world.
I stand before you not as an expert, but as a concerned citizen. One of the 400,000 people who marched in the streets of New York on Sunday, and the billions of others around the world who want to solve our climate crisis. As an actor, I pretend for a living. I play fictitious characters, often solving fictitious problems. I believe that mankind has looked at climate change in that same way, as if it were a fiction, as if pretending that climate change wasn't real would somehow make it go away. But I think we all know better than that now. Every week, we're seeing new and undeniable climate events, evidence that accelerated climate change is here right now. Droughts are intensifying, our oceans are acidifying, with methane plumes rising up from the ocean floor. We are seeing extreme weather events and the West Antarctic and Greenland ice sheets melting at unprecedented rates, decades ahead of scientific projections. The scientific community knows it, industry knows it, governments know it, even the United States military knows it. The chief of the U.S. Navy's Pacific Command, Admiral Samuel Locklear, recently said that climate change is our single greatest security threat. My friends, this body, perhaps more than any other gathering in human history, now faces this difficult but achievable task. You can make history, or you will be vilified by it. To be clear, this is not about just telling people to change their light bulbs or to buy a hybrid car. This disaster has grown beyond the choices that individuals make. This is now about our industries and our governments around the world taking decisive, large-scale action. We need to put a price tag on carbon emissions and eliminate government subsidies for oil, coal, and gas companies. We need to end the free ride that industrial polluters have been given in the name of a free market economy. They do not deserve our tax dollars. They deserve our scrutiny, for the economy itself will die if our ecosystems collapse. This is not a partisan debate. It is a human one. Clean air and a livable climate are inalienable human rights. And solving this crisis is not a question of politics. It is a question of our own survival. But now it is your turn. The time to answer humankind's greatest challenge is now. We beg of you to face it with courage and honesty. Thank you.